Please welcome Shane to the stage.
Okay. Before we get into the talk, I do want to do a little bit of an advert about the Agile Alliance New Zealand. As Beth said, I am the founding chair. We have formed an affiliate organization of the Agile Alliance globally, that is the Agile Alliance New Zealand. We even have a real logo. And we came up with, why should we do this? Those of you who are aware of the Agile Alliance globally, one of the things that that organization does is run conferences. We looked at that and said, you know what, there's actually a pretty good conference that goes on every year in New Zealand in this space, and we don't really need to be trying to compete with them. So why would we bother to have an Agile Alliance New Zealand? And we came up with this purpose, to be a leading forum to create and sustain a nationwide Agile community, independent of commercial drivers and/or any specific method or framework, guided by and actively advocating for the values and principles of the Agile Manifesto. So the keynote this morning, principles are those things that guide us. We've got some goals. We support the growth of the Agile mindset throughout industry in New Zealand, particular emphasis on areas that are currently underserved, both in terms of geographic as well as industries. And we also looked at social benefit. So programs that have socially beneficial outcomes, as well as improving the state of the industry. So one of the things that we've done so far as the Agile Alliance New Zealand is we've run 2 one-day open space events, one in Tauranga and one in Hamilton. In Tauranga, we had over 100 people, just short of 130. Hamilton, I think it was about 85. Got another one coming up in Christchurch in February next year, and we're looking to take these ideas outside of the main centres to the smaller parts of the country where actually there is a thriving community who are really, really hungry, and they don't come to the big cities. So the reason we put this up is to encourage you to get involved. Send me an email. We have a local membership, and you also get discounted membership of the Global Agile Alliance. But we're looking for what should we do in terms of supporting the New Zealand community? What is, we've got this conference. We know in Wellington, there's the Agile Welly group. In Auckland, there's Agile Auckland, and a number of meetups, and they're doing a really good job. We don't want to compete with those, but what else does the Agile community in New Zealand as a whole need? One of the things we're doing from the socially beneficial stuff is we're partnering with an organization whose name I have forgotten, who run startup weekend type events or hackathons really, where people get together to build products for non-profits. So is that the sort of thing that we as a community want to be involved in? We've got some funding from the Global Agile Alliance. We're also, and I'm going to hold the hand out, we're also looking for sponsorship from local organizations to support us in spreading the Agile message around the rest of New Zealand. So that's the advert done. The foundations of business agility. So we'll look a little bit at the need for, and then I want to explore what we can do. I want to give you some practical techniques at an organization level and at an individual level, because truly it starts with you. The quote from this morning, be the change that you want to see in the world. This is not something that we impose from on high. It's a change that has to happen at the level of the individual. So what is this business agility thing? And there's a few definitions out there. These were 2 that I found were quite useful. The nimbleness, the ability to adapt quickly while empowering everyone associated with the brand. Customer-centric. This is an image from Evan Laborn. And he changes the focus of the organization and says we put the customer right in the middle, and we have the things that we have to do to support it. The ability of an organization to renew itself, to adapt, to change quickly, to succeed in a rapidly changing, ambiguous, turbulent environment. Now, I maintain that for every one of you, that is the world today. A rapidly changing, turbulent business environment. So why? And this is an acronym that we've seen bandied around a reasonable amount over the last about 2 years. It started to come out. VUCA. It comes from US military. Volatility, the rate of change. And we know that the rate of change is increasing, and it's increasing at an exponential rate. The uncertainty that we face in our organizations and in our ecosystems that surround our organizations. The complexity which we have to work with. There is very often no direct relationship between cause and effect. The pathway is convoluted at best, and ambiguity. We honestly don't know what we don't know, but what we do know is that something's going to surprise us, if not now, tomorrow. And in that VUCA world, it is critical that we are able to adapt and respond, to be flexible, to be, another hackneyed term that we're starting to hear, anti-fragile, able to bend, able to cope. And putting that responsiveness and that ability to change deep into the DNA of our organization. So change becomes our norm. Now, in information technology, we've borrowed the ideas from Lean and we've brought it into Agile in IT. And actually, it's been pretty successful. We're seeing that we are delivering products quicker. We're seeing that our customers are more satisfied. Our quality is improving. And if we look at the metrics of Agile, the various surveys, we're seeing that, yeah, it's working. But what starts to happen is we bump against the edges of our organizations. The IT group is doing great things, but now, where are we going? Let's take an easy target, human resources. Well, first and foremost, just the term makes me cringe. A human being is not a resource. A resource is something that is consumed in the production of a product. I hope our organizations are not consuming our people. The other thing that you sometimes hear, people are our greatest asset. No, slavery was abolished. Now, the only person I might be an asset to is my wife, and I'm probably more a liability. But people are the primary source of value. And we want collaborative team environments. And then we have a KPI mechanism that stack ranks individuals against each other. So it is if I'm going to get the bigger bonus, I need to prove that I'm better than you. So I am never going to collaborate with you. I might pay lip service to it, but we're never actually going to work well together. So that's just one example of where the organization structures get in the way. If your IT delivery, your product delivery group is building and deploying products every 2 weeks, or even faster if we're using DevOps, but your marketing cycle runs at 9 to 12 months, well, what opportunities have we lost? Because nobody knows we've got this new value. But this means we have to change. We have to change our organizations. And what's really interesting, oops, that should be over there a little bit. The state of business agility. What is really interesting from this study from CA is that the part of the organization that we all want to decry, the project management office, they get it. They're looking at it and say, hey, we've got to change because we know that our customers want things quicker. We know that quality is a problem. We know that customer satisfaction and employee engagement is not where it should be. And the modern PMO is adopting and moving away from being the process police into the value enablers in our organizations. But unfortunately, the other parts of the business are dragging behind. And we can't have nimble, agile businesses unless it's across the whole value stream. And that keynote this morning led beautifully into the concept of the value stream. The interconnected flow of value across the whole business. And this means we have to change the way that we look and the way that we work. We've got to move from top-down command and control management to leadership at every level. The people who are closest to the customers need to be empowered to make the best decisions. There's a hotel chain in North America, fairly upmarket, fairly expensive hotel chain, and they have a policy. Anybody who comes across a guest who has a problem is empowered to spend up to $2,500 solving that guest's problem immediately. There is no need to go and find a manager and get permission and fill out a form. It's, what's up? How can I help? Let's fix this problem. And whatever the problem is, they fix it. Yes, afterwards they have a reporting mechanism that says, you know what, I did. I went and spent, I grabbed the corporate credit card, I spent $800, I ordered a limousine, whatever. But we turn the trust equation around and we say that the people who are dealing with the primary providers of value in our organization, the customers, are the ones that actually know what the customers need. Now, what a weird thought, never works. Hey. And we put that leadership responsibility down to the individual at the edge and all the way through. How many times have you heard the, let's do more with less? Let's be more efficient. Yeah, really, really efficiently solving the wrong problems. I loved the building crap at the speed of light. Why not just slow down and do less? The mantra of stop starting in order to start stopping. We have this fixation with busyness that gets in the way of actually maximizing value. We measure utilization of individuals and we target 120%. I have actually seen organizations that have a utilization target rate for individuals of 120%. We get them working on 6 projects at once because heaven forbid they might have a half-an-hour gap while they're waiting for somebody. So they can be busy. But we all know the cognitive impact of trying to multitask. The process over people needs to shift to the minimum viable process. So governance doesn't go away. The previous talk in this space was talking about governance and metrics. But what's the minimum viable process that's going to enable us with our empowered, trusted people? The budgeting process is fundamentally broken. You do not know today what you're going to need to spend money on in a year and a half's time. But I would submit that most of your organizations are right now planning how we're going to spend money in a year and a half's time. Now, if we go back to the study of just IT projects, 75% of requirements change in a 12-month period. Something is broken. That doesn't mean we shouldn't plan, but how can we do the least amount of planning and take an adaptive planning approach? And that's the real-time value-based metrics. Get the feedback. The plan, do, check, act loop. But a really important part of that is check, act. I see a lot of plan, do, plan, do, plan, do, plan, do. Not a lot of check, act. And that move away from activity-based milestones to rolling wave feedback-based planning. And the other one that destroys value in our organizations is the concept of temporary teams on projects. We keep people together just long enough to start becoming a high-performing team. And then we disband them. Harvard Business Review, December 2013, looked at the business value of stable teams. And they found across the organizations that, on average, keeping people together for longer than 6 months results in a 30% uplift in return on investment from those same people. Change nothing else, just keep the people together. How many of you have changed teams in the last 6 months? So what do we need to do? Small teams. This is work by Steve Denning, looking at what are the characteristics of organizations that are embracing this approach and are being successful. Moving away from hierarchies into small, cross-functional, self-organizing teams. I don't know, there was something in an Agile Manifesto about that, wasn't there? Putting the customer as our focus. Organizations that focus on customer delight, and again, studies looking at the value in the stock market, the organizations that are focusing on customer delight over shareholder return are actually providing more shareholder return than organizations that are focused on shareholder return. If you delight your customers, profit is the consequence, the side effect. And break our bureaucracies and create small networks, or large networks if necessary. Now this means organizational structural change. None of this stuff is easy. It takes intestinal fortitude from the top down and from the bottom up. It's massive and radical change, and it starts with psych safety. How many of you have seen this one in the last couple of days? Right, I'm not going to go through it again, but do remember the single most important characteristic for high-performing teams is the safety factor. The feeling that my colleagues have got my back. That it's okay to make a mistake. And I'm not going to be attacked and belittled. I'm going to be supported, and we're going to learn from it. Learning organizations. IDEO, a pretty successful, innovative organization. In today's volatile world, the organization best equipped to thrive are the ones who are the most able to generate, embrace, and execute new ideas. Constantly learning. Anything you do today will be copied by a competitor tomorrow. So if you're not already thinking about the next thing, you've lost. And in order to achieve that, we have to have a different way of thinking in our organizations. And this comes from Henrik Knieberg, looking at the dimensions of alignment and autonomy. So high autonomy, low alignment, teams are hanging a ball, but nobody knows where we're going. On the other hand, neither, everybody is totally confused. High alignment, low autonomy, command and control management, we're going to cross the river, build a bridge. Okay, we can get there, but how do we create an environment where we've got people who are empowered, who are able to do the work? And it is a really strange thing. When we employ people, we look for skilled professionals who behave in an adult way. And then we put them into an environment where we treat them worse than kindergarten children. Weird. We tell them what to do. We employ project managers whose sole responsibility is to define tasks and then to measure people against those tasks. That's not project management. That's project administration. It's micromanagement from hell. How do we create that alignment and autonomy? And the role of leadership and management in these organizations is to create a compelling vision of success. This is where we're going, and this is why we need to get there. And then work with these empowered teams and let them figure out the best way of achieving that. Put some boundaries in place. Put some metrics in place, put some feedback loops in so that the teams learn and the organization learns. And oh, by the way, that goal is going to change. And when it changes, convey why and what's happening. And that comes to measurements. Metrics do matter. But again, the problem is that we tend to measure the easy things. The amount of time somebody spends sitting at a desk. That's one of the most common metrics in organizations today. It's filled in on a timesheet. Every Friday afternoon, you sit down and you fill it in. You don't remember what you were doing, but there's a project code that you've got to allocate some time against. And there's a cost center that's got to be charged for the 15 minutes that you spent in the bathroom on Wednesday. Yeah. But how many times have you solved a problem when having a shower or taking a walk on the beach? Do you have a project code for problem solved in the shower? And can you charge that to a particular project? But that's what we do, because we're dealing in the creative, innovative space today. The types of problems that our organizations are facing are not what Dave Snowden calls the obvious, where cause and effect is directly related. If you're in that obvious space, then yes, you can measure the easy things. But that's not where the value is coming in today's economy. We're in the, lovely term, knowledge worker environment. And when we measure the wrong things, bad things happen. This is a picture of an aircraft. An airline that I was closely associated with for a number of years. They had a metric that the whole organization was measured on-time departures. Single most important characteristic for that organization was get the plane on time, because if we're late, our passengers are unhappy. And also, by the way, if we're late, the airport charges us more in terms of landing fees. So on-time departures does matter for an airline. They had a plane, the engine had a few problems. They took it out of service. They got it back into service quickly because they needed it to meet this on-time departures metric. So they got it back quickly. There was a manager shouting at the engineering team, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. They got it, they hurried. And, they did depart on time. they never arrived again. Because during that departure and takeoff, the engine fell off the wing because the manager had been shouting at the engineering team and some bolts got left off. The airline, by the way, went bust. It doesn't exist anymore. Now, maybe not in your organization, but other organizations measure the wrong things and cause the wrong behavior quite frequently. Different models for budgeting, new financial models. The Beyond Budgeting Institute has got a lot of really good stuff about how do we shift our approach from the annual or even longer planning budgeting cycles to a rolling wave learning feedback-driven approach. It doesn't mean we don't have financial goals, and doesn't mean that we are irresponsible with the money we spend. In fact, we're much more responsible because we're looking at it on a constant basis. And we're making this stuff visible. We saw the keynote yesterday afternoon, the portfolio Kanban wall. Well, here's an example. This was in NZ Post House before they were not allowed to go in there anymore. Up on the top was the sorting room, they called it, an executive planning room. And something that was really interesting, it was a small conference room space. And around the walls, they had all these Post-it notes up. Every one of those is one of the initiatives that the organization has got underway at that point in time. Once a week, the executive team gets together in the room and they discuss what's happening, what's going on. A couple of interesting things. One of them is the room is open. Anyone can come in and have a look. Now, some of the initiatives have got code names, but the vast majority of them, everyone knows what's going on. And you can see when this is happening, when it's planned, when we think it's going to happen, what's going on, what the state is, and color has an implication, and so forth. But the other really interesting thing was that picture there. And this was psychological safety. Part of their protocol is if we're having a conversation in this room and there is a topic that we are not addressing, that we are consciously avoiding, and anyone notices it, the elephant in the room, well, write it down, stick it on the door, and we will not leave the room until we've tackled the elephant conversation. It was safe, and it was courageous. Values-driven. Act on feedback. It was wonderful to see that image earlier. Plan, do, check, act. Been around for a long time. But that means we've got to be honest. We've got to listen. What do we do next? What's the small experiment, the small change? This is not about radical changes. This is constant small change. Kaizen. Continuous improvement approaches. Adapting and responding. I'm not going to go deep into the wastes, but the ideas of lean from this morning's keynote, find the wastes and remove them. And there are the 7 wastes. But again, this takes courage. If most of my job is, I don't know, adding extra features or getting stuff partially done, it becomes really embarrassing. So it has to be pretty safe. We have to rethink, how do we respond at the speed of change? Listen, empower, move away from resource and asset thinking and look at people as the primary source of value. Outcomes over outputs and value over busy. Measure the right things. Create and think of innovation as a core competency. And whatever your organization is, innovation is the key to success and survival. And move away from trying to pretend that we can predict the unpredictable. And there's a whole lot of stuff about no projects and no estimates. I will do a place commercial here. There's a book coming out, we hope by end of this year, probably sometime early next year, that Evan Laborde and myself have written or are writing about no projects. Moving from the project-driven approach to the continuous flow of value approach in our organizations. But this requires real change. Now, all too often we see the veneer of an agile transformation. You know, we do a daily stand-up, so now we're agile. We rename all of our project managers to Scrum Masters. Don't train them in anything new. Don't change any behaviors, but we're agile. No. This is about making real, courageous change in our organizations. And that change starts with you. It starts with thinking about your established set of attitudes and habits, your mindset towards uncertainty, to embracing, adapting, adopting, accepting, and being able to become a lifelong learner. To be passionately dissatisfied. Don't accept the status quo. We've always done it that way is a bad reason to continue doing it tomorrow. Challenge it, and challenge it every single day. That again was the message of the keynote this morning. Every single day, what's the small thing we can do that's going to improve the way that I am working? And hold yourself and your colleagues accountable for your own continued learning and for that small improvements. Think about who is your customer. Who are you in the organization to provide value for? Where do you fit in that value stream, and who is at the end of it? And how do I make their lives better? How do I get innovative? Estimates as hypotheses, and actually use a hypothesis and an experimentation approach. But again, courage to actually examine the outcomes and create that time and space. And that doesn't mean getting permission from a manager. That means doing it, owning your own improvements. It's not the organization's responsibility, it is your responsibility. What are the things that you can do to change these mindsets? Because if we do that, we can revisit that VUCA, and we can have a compelling vision, clear understanding, clarity in sense-making, and the ability to respond to change in order to profit in a turbulent world. So VUCA as a positive factor. A rapidly evolving, dynamic, complex, chaotic business environment is the norm rather than the exception. And the organizations and the individuals that embrace this are the ones that actually get the biggest value. So that's it. Questions?